BlizzCon is back, baby. Mere days away. I cannot wait. For some reason, it feels as if BlizzCon has kind of gone to the shitter for the last 4 years. Don't know what happened there. The 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft. Chris Metzen's coming back. 30th anniversary of the company. There's a lot of these unique milestones that are all kind of nicely integrating themselves into it. And we're starting to get some more believable leaks in terms of the whole Avaloran thing with Kazalgar, blah, blah, blah. And that's, in and of itself pretty interesting. And it gets that speculation wheel going and starting to think about it. And that's what I sort of want to just download my thoughts. It's just going to be literally me dribbling shit a lot. And I'll be curious to see how you guys, what your predictions and things like that are for BlizzCon, etc. But yeah, I'm just kind of very excited, so I just need to talk. It's just my way of like venting and being happy and excited. But the Avaloran stuff mostly looks pretty good, but we also need to take that as a pinch of salt due to the fact that there could be living in half-truths with these kind of leaks. Now, it seems more believable because they are very reminiscent of the still images you get from your features trailer, where it's like a new zone, Avaloran, and it does this swooping big camera angles right the way through. And with that could totally lend itself to some stills from that particular trailer that this group is working on. We've seen supporting evidence in terms of what would be like a website launch for it. That is obviously completely hidden, but yeah, the domain for everything of like a landing page for the new expansion. So I think that's probably pretty on the money in terms of the overarching story of it. I suspect it should start, not necessarily resolve the annoying issue, but I suspect it should at least start resolving some of the issues with this giant sword in Silithus. Maybe that's how we get around the stormy seas and things. It's not necessarily a, get on a boat and pirates and all that kind of stuff, or voyaging in that traditional capacity of, boats and everything, like literally sailing the seas. The whole thing with Towley, almost said Taliesin then, but the other T1, Towley, for example, had to take down his slip of the tongue, I suppose, if that's what you want to call it. We don't even know what truth it is, but he basically came out and said, you guys are still thinking seas, you should be thinking underground, essentially, or words to that effect. And that sort of started jogging the thought process of, what's going to happen with the sword? Is that how we gain access to the other side of Azeroth? A whole host of different stuff. Who knows how they're going to go about it, but I think it would be safe to say that we are exploring the other side of Azeroth in some capacity. Kazalgar, the fissures in the ground, anything like that could start getting the ball rolling in terms of some sort of undergroundy pathway or expansion as a whole, anything like that might help circumvent the storms to our west and different things like that. We've seen a whole host of different leads in terms of what potentially could come down. Only time will tell in terms of a couple of days. Now, in terms of the overarching what big things we could want, again, because of this combination of all these little milestones and Chris Metzen being back and everything like that, it is going to be interesting. So there's the obvious things that I would love to see coming in the game, even though I might not engage with them entirely myself. You've got things like player housing, very cool. I hope it comes in. I'll probably dabble, and maybe I'll end up dabbling a lot more because it has any new feature like that has a level of prestige to begin with. So dragon riding feels like the latest version of that with some of the skins you can get in terms of like your Razageth skin and the Fyrakk skin from Aberrus at the moment. And then sure, you'll have the owl and little things like that. But the mount system, for example, kind of feels overblown at this point. So it's all well and good that I had Ashes of Alar back in Wrath of the Lich King kind of thing. Or maybe I think it was Cataclysm. I feel like I definitely had it by Cata. So for the most part, I've enjoyed Ashes of Alar this entire time. It was one of the cool mounts that everyone's like, oh, no way, you had Ashes. So very lucky, yay for me. But the mount system at the moment now is just kind of that overblown that nothing really feels any unique or rare anymore. So sure, you might have your Invincible or Mimrin's Head, or it just doesn't have that same prestige behind it anymore. So that could be an area of opportunity where player housing kind of gets to bring that to the forefront a little bit again. Transmog did the same thing. You saw someone with a badass set and you're like, holy shit, you got that cool stuff. That's awesome. And while that still exists because you still can visually see, you have the color tint of mythic raid gear of this current season. I can visually see that, so therefore, hey, that's really great. But now in the sea of just colors and random shit, and everyone's got a cool set that they're all coming up with themselves in terms of transmog. Transmog has moved it again from a prestige system to a collector system, essentially. So all the collectors that are out there that enjoy just 100%ing stuff and collecting the most things, great system for them. And I'm not even against it having come in the game, but I am now at the point where I'm kind of like, you kind of see it lost its flavor for what I enjoyed as a player growing up. I literally remember, late teenage years, looking up to the dude that had the thing, whether it was Shadowmourne or the full tier set, just something cool that you could immediately identify because your set was just bland and everyone else's was bland and boring and lame ass shit. But they had the thing that matched and it was super cool. And you didn't have odd random shit. They just all fit and they had that badass weapon. And just little moments like that where, you kind of just went, oh man, that it gave you the drive and desire. I want to be like that guy. But it's totally lost with Transmog. So same system there. Eventually, player housing will just be overbloated. But if they introduce some sort of hey, you did this badass thing, so you get to chop the head off the Medusa and hang it on your wall, and people come to your player house zone and they see your badass thing on the wall and they go, oh my god, you got that? No way, that's fucking sick. So it will have prestige to begin with, so I'm definitely going to engage with it on some level. And then it'll probably fizzle out into whatever over time. So I think that'll be good. World revamp definitely needs to happen. This is another area where Blizzard is eventually going to have to decide, how do we plan to deal with just the nature of this MMO? Because in 20 years from now, we're just going to have like 20 more zones or 10 more zones, like entire massive areas, zones like, and discover a new island, or we just keep adding, or we start going cosmic. That's a whole nother kettle of fish that you have to deal with, is that angle where it's like, we've revamped some things here and there, but now we're going back out to the Void Lords and the Void Zones and go to the Twisting Nether directly, and now we're in Demon Land. There's going to be at some point where it was cool and meaningful and impactful when it was the thing that will just never be truly known. They just come from this Twisting Nether place and the demons just keep raining down and you don't go there. And I think Shadowlands really kind of shone the light on the whole. The moment you start breaking that wall, so to speak, and now we go to the land of the death itself, you kind of lose a little bit of, fear factor from it. If we go to the Twisting Nether place or the Void Lord's home, of course, by going there, we beat the thing. The only thing that would really lend itself to something, overarching and cool is if we go there, we attempt to beat the thing, and then all of a sudden, the last raid, we don't get to beat the thing, and they beat us, and that leads into WoW 2, like a full hard fucking reset because the whole of Azeroth fucked up. That could be, cool. And I wouldn't be against it, that's for sure, because I do think a hard reset is eventually going to have to be put on the table and spoon fed to us if needed. Because, again, in 20 years' time, how many extra bloody random islands are we going to find or new planets to go to? And levels, like literal level increases that we're going to have to deal with, and then eventually squish everything down, and then that makes the other stuff obsolete. And then in 20 years' time from now, we're going to have time walking for Wrath, Legion, just TBC. Like, imagine how many expansions you would have for time walking. And it's just like, it's this week. And you've just got just so many expansions and raids worth that eventually they're going to have to do the hard reset. So could that start happening? Who knows? I would be in favor of WoW taking a stronger stance of revamping what's currently here. So not necessarily a Cataclysm style stuff, but almost kind of like a Cataclysm style revamp. Maybe they'll do it partially at first. Maybe they'll just give it a skip of, hey, this expansion is now 10 years down the line. You know, you've done your thing, everything's all nice and happy and dandy, but now all the zones have evolved and grown over that 10 years. Khadgar's died, bloody Anduin's now the old dude, you know, and really push the story in that capacity. Who knows how they're going to do it. What else are we coming down the pipeline? Now, I would like some overarching features change. I really think the gearing system's come a long way. The changes with the talent system and specifically how gearing has worked for 10.1 and then leading the changes that they've then iterated on from 10.1 into 10.2 look really promising. Happy with that. I still think Mythic Plus as a feature set of what to do at endgame really needs to be touched on. There's a whole video of what I would personally like to see that I'm probably going to end up working on, just to really kind of highlight and showcase my vision of what Mythic Plus would be, which matters not because I am simply one man, but hey, this is my freaking channel to dribble shit on. So that'll be really good. But I do think as a basic premise, there needs to be some pretty significant changes for the Mythic Plus side of things. At least being able to table the discussion and bring it to the table, of things like getting rid of the keystone, allow us to go into any dungeon, timer, do we keep it, do we not? You know, there's a multitude of different things like that we sort of need to tackle at some point. In terms of the class race combo things, I mean, sure, I think it would be inevitable that Drakthir is going to get to different sides. I really hope one of the, whether they just give it to us as a body type or something like that to do with the Drakthir, or whether it ends up coming in as like a, what's the word? Not race, not advanced race, what's it called? Allied race. Whether it ends up coming in as an allied race or something like that for the bigger, bulkier Drakthir people. Who knows? Maybe they'll just come in as its own race entirely. I do think races will slowly get sprinkled in. It wouldn't surprise me if a new playable race gets announced in the expansion. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know. In terms of the class combinations, I definitely don't think we're getting a new class, but I do think we're going to get new specs because Blizzard will have to decide one way or another. Do we consider the support role with Augmentation Evoker to be a success or not a success? I think by any standard or metric that you cover it, it is a success because unfortunately, even if you don't like it, it's obviously performing well. There's a niche for it. There's definitely those that do like it as opposed to those that don't. Numerically, feedback, like subjectively, objectively, whichever way you look at it, it feels and seems to be quite successful in terms of Augmentation Evoker and the support role in general. And so there's a run with that now, a whole nother kettle of fish in terms of do you need to alter the group sizes? How is it going to impact raid? So many different things. I think we're at the pretty saturated point for classes. I genuinely do not believe we're going to get another class. Even if we do very, very long time from now, or maybe new classes will get reworked into like a WoW 2 or whatever the case may be. But as of right now, I definitely don't see a new class coming in even remotely being mentioned. But we're definitely going to see more specs. Now, the obvious ones being things like your Demon Hunter, they only have 2 specs, so of course they're going to get another one. Maybe, who knows, like they shouldn't just throw Demon Hunter a spec just because they only have 2. I'd much rather go where it makes sense and it's sensible to do so, rather than going, we feel like we owe this one a spec because they only have 2, so they just come up with some random bullshit about fell this and then it ends up just being janky and weird. But I do think at least 3 or 4 more support specs might be under works at the moment. Most likely we'll see and hear more about them as they go along, because if support role is going to continue to be supported in any capacity, then yeah, they need more specs. You can't just have augmentation as the only support spec, whether they end up fleshing it out as a totally whole role, like when I go to Dungeon Finder, I can click tank, DPS, healer, or support, or whether it just ends up being wrapped up in the bow that is, you know, the DPS thing overall in general, because by all means you still technically have range and melee DPS within that same category, so maybe that'll just fall in there as well, who knows. But I do see that coming. Revamped profession stuff, I mean, sure, I've never really got into archaeology, so there's a comment for it, but I think it's just give the people what they want. Clearly people want archaeology, so it'd be nice to see that come back. And the main thing is that I want to see is, believe it or not, I kind of want to move away from the players being the focal of the story. Like, I don't like all this champion thing. I don't like that we're the mall walker and we're the center of attention and we're this. I would much rather go back to tell the story of the badass, right? Like the Varian Rins, the NPC that is a total fucking legend. Bring them into the forefront so we can all revel in how fucking awesome they are, and we're the supporting cast members to the story, as opposed to trying to make us feel important. And, you know, so I really hope that that's where they go in terms of the storylines. But yeah, BlizzCon's honestly going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. Even on Classic Plus front, personally, I'm on the fence that I really, really don't want to see Classic Kata get announced. I think that's going to be frustratingly lame. Because then, by that virtue, while there are some tweaks, you're almost committing to just having Classic have a string of players that are just 14 years lagged behind. And that feels kind of... I really hope that Classic Plus ends up coming to fruition in terms of just giving new content at the level 60 gate within the Classic sphere. None of this TBC shit, none of the Wrath stuff, none of that. If we could just, I guess, get new content within just the nice, neat zone of Azeroth that it is, then that'll be really enjoyable. I reckon that would be good fun, because it's at a time where the MMO had much more of those traditional RPG elements. And then naturally, 20 years down the line, retail is what it is now, but it is a product of, you know, the evolution of gaming in general, right? Much more seasonal, dipping into collection, that kind of stuff. Whereas you can truly get a sense that Classic is the ultimate MMO, but RPGs in fucking bold letters, right? So I hope they stick to that kind of grassroots of Classic and then just develop more content for it from there. So that'll be interesting. I hope that's how they go with the Classic Plus route. But it's also Breezy, for example, happened to mention as well that it is going to be frustrating if you're a retail player, that the only way you can experience this Classic Plus stuff is by going and playing Classic Plus, like you're missing out on Warcraft content, so to speak. At first I went, yeah, good point, but the more I think about it, the more I go, well, I view the Classic Plus as non-canon, right? Or not that anything's really canon anymore. The moment Shadowlands happened, everything went to shit. But in terms of the storyline, in my opinion. But we are in a position where even if the story was really good, it was delivered in a way that felt very flat, and it didn't resonate with me, and it seemed to not resonate with many people. And then you had the snippets of like the Venthir zone, for example, or the Venthir faction, was kind of really cool and engaging, and I enjoyed it. And yeah, the Castle Nathria, I can't remember the boss's name. That's gonna do my head in. Sardonathris. He was portrayed and done quite well. I really enjoyed him. But it was like one beam of light in a sea of darkness and sadness, which was essentially what Shadowlands was, right? So they probably nailed it on the head then. But I do think we're in a position where we can kind of accept that Classic is like the love letter that will always remain as that, you know, thing that we don't have to take as super gospel. And any new content that comes to it doesn't need to be like... That is much more in the realm of your timey-wimey what-ifs moments and things like that could fit in the Classic era, as opposed to going, hey, this is a story beat that we're pursuing and pushing, and it is the Warcraft universe evolving, as opposed to saying, well, I don't like having two separate strands of the Warcraft universe, when you know one of them's, you know, it is what it is. It's just kind of its own little entity, as that forever love letter back to the traditional RPG elements of WoW when it came in, right? So I don't know, it's going to be interesting. I do think there is merit in also kind of asking how they deal with Classic, because even Classic in and of itself is having these splits, right? People enjoy Wrath. Some of them might not necessarily enjoy Wrath and be like, oh, I prefer BC. Then the question comes, do you go to Kata? Do you just pick the next expansion everyone agrees on? Like, do you just skip Kata and go to Mop or Legion or this or that, whatever the case may be? And then as you hit each expansion, you're basically picking the top 2 to 3 nuances that people really fucking annoyed by, and then trying to fix them before the thing came out. Like if they ever did a classic Legion, they're clearly going to make the legendaries not be RNG from the beginning. I think that's like the obvious W for that regard, right? So they'll tidy up the little annoyances that people experience the first time. With that in mind, it's like even classic in and of itself is now having the delayed by 14 years branch, which is your Wrath and then Kata and all that stuff. The hardcore branch, which is like you enjoy this for the time being, then you can move it over to regular classic, and then that even in and of itself will have its classic plus path, whatever that happens to be. Then you go, is classic plus just also got a hardcore version of it, and there's just some realms that are considered hardcore, and then when they die they just go to the normal classic realms, in which case you still sort of had these two paths, right? The Wrath to Kata to Mop kind of path, and then the Classic Plus, nothing to do with the previous expansions kind of path. And then of that, there's another two splits of hardcore versus normal. How far down the rabbit hole do you end up going in terms of splitting the Classic base, right? So that's another question that needs to be tackled in some capacity. But I don't know, either way, I'm sitting here, it's a bloody Wednesday. Couple days left. I cannot wait. It's 2 a.m. for me, but I will still be here. I'm going to stock up some energy drinks, have some coffees, and we're going to watch it. I want to record it as well, and it's going to be pretty juicy. I'm looking forward to it. Well, let me know what you guys are hoping for or what you wish for. Thanks for listening to me dribble shit. This was like my creative outlet. Well, not very creative, obviously, but this was just my outlet to just dribble some shit about the expansion because I'm actually excited again. And it feels good. So yeah, thanks very much for listening, and fucking BlizzCon, let's go. Can't wait.